Hey, everybody, pull up a seat. I have just topped off my glass. Why don't you grab your favorite beverage and join me? This is the Paddy Wagon. Good day, good morning, and welcome back to the Paddy Wagon, folks. Very cool guest today. Very cool guest. It's a good one for us. It's a good one for everybody, I think. This man is a colonel in the United States Army. It's a rank that represents not just a wealth of, I think, military knowledge and experience, but also commitment to, duty, country, and certainly the men and women that you lead. This guy has decades of service under his belt. He commands troops, has navigated complex operations, and faced both challenges and rewards that come with a career in the armed forces. So from leadership lessons learned on the battlefield to insights on resilience, strategy, and sacrifice, we are about to dive into a conversation that will give you a glimpse into the life of the man we have before us, a high-ranking officer. It is my privilege to welcome to the show Deputy Chief of Staff for U.S. Africa Command, Colonel Damon Wells. How was that, my friend? Was that okay?
That was a great introduction, man. Thanks so much. Thanks so much.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks for coming on. I hope it's not disrespectful to call you buddy. I feel like we're friends now. I want to salute you when I talk to you.
Yeah, you can call me whatever you want.
I was raised right, man.
Yeah, there you go. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so shit. I'm sure you have. Well, I'll tell you what. If you're stateside, I would buy you a drink. Prior to, and everyone knows this, if they listen to this show long enough, I send out the questionnaire. Everyone's heard about the questionnaire. This gentleman here is like, yeah, I'll have a drink with you. Well, we didn't account for the time zones, so this man is up pretty early for his time. I'm not sure what he's got in the cup today, but I'll let him tell us anything of interest.
So, sadly, I'm having coffee because I got up at 3:30. It's 4:30 here in the morning. A little bit of coffee. It's Tanzanian pea berry, one of my favorites because I'm kind of a coffee snob. But just to make it exciting, I threw a pre-workout on top of that. So I'm going to be pretty jazzed up here in about 10 minutes. And when we're done, I'm actually going to the gym. So no alcoholic beverage, but some mind-altering substances there. So it's got to count.
Yeah, I hear you, brother. I assume gym every day, get up early, same time, get out there and get the day started, right?
Most days, man. I'm 53 years old now, so every now and then it's you got to take a couple days off and let the bones recover.
Damn, dude, I've said this before on the podcast. It's audio only. This dude does not look 53 years old, man. I should have gotten the military to try to stay young. You don't look that old, dude.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm sure sometimes you feel that old, but
yeah, there's certain parts of my body that definitely feel old. I've had knee surgeries and I've managed it took me 30 years, but I've managed to figure out, because when you're young, you want to do the workout that feels good. And I've been a power lifter. I've squatted over 800 pounds, over 700 pounds many times, competitions, done long runs, and it's just done all the PT that looks cool and feels good. But now I'm at the point where I want to do the workouts that actually are good and don't create debilitating injuries in the future. So my workouts have scaled down a little bit, unfortunately, because that's the sexy part of being young, is you could do crazy shit.
Yeah,
but I'm okay with it.
Man.
Just keep myself from going to the hospital is my goal now.
Okay. All right. Good. Please, stay out of the hospital, man. So here's you with where you're at. Now, I had to look it up. I think I have it right. So I'm going to try to say this. You are stationed in Stuttgart, Germany?
Yeah, that's right.
Did I say
southern
that okay?
Germany. Yeah, Stuttgart. Yep.
Stuttgart.
It's a fairly big city. And the reason I point that out is because at least for the Army, most military installations, there's always a sort of sister city right outside that is built around. They're fairly small.
Okay.
Here in Stuttgart, the garrisons that we live and work on are actually really small, and they're spread out over 2 or 3 locations. But Stuttgart is a pretty big metropolitan city. So not used to living there. And because I've been doing this for so long, living next to a big city, I'm just not used to it. I don't like it. I prefer small cities, like kind of American cities where they're just little dinky towns. And this one is, you got to deal with the traffic and, I ride motorcycles, so there's rarely long distance motorcycle rides where you don't have to negotiate little villages and a bunch of cars and traffic. So, yep, Stuttgart, pretty big, but it's the home of Porsche and Mercedes, and so it's there's some cool stuff to do here.
Oh, very cool. How's the beer scene over there? That's anytime I talk with somebody that's been to Germany, going to Germany, it's like, dude, beer. Yeah,
if you're
check
a beer
it out.
drinker, this is your nirvana here. The beer is
Okay,
is great.
nice. You got any favorites?
No, I kind of experiment everywhere I go with, because there's just local and different types of beers. It's always good. It's always fresh. No favorites. I don't really drink a ton of beer, but I can't resist. I like the taste of beer. So when I go out, I definitely drink it. There's
Okay.
and half of them I can't pronounce, but they're still delicious.
Yeah, I like a lot of them from Belgium, and I look at it and I'm like, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
whatever this says
Belgian
here.
ale.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
I just
call it
drank
an
a
ale and stick
Chimay
with
not
that.
too long ago.
Oh, those are nice. Those are good.
Yeah,
They got
so
those
good.
fancy glasses. I feel fancy when I drink one of those.
That's it, man. That makes such a big difference. You put it in a fancy
does,
glass.
it does.
and Now I feel fancy, and it just makes the beverage taste better.
So you mentioned coffee snob. I am a coffee snob, but I'll be honest with you. I drink my black. So, a lot of the stuff you can find most places, 8 a.m. But when I have a chance, I just learned about it recently. I think it's Nicholas. It's a local place here that sources some pretty good beans. So I'm going to try some of that. But I'm a glass snob. I learned that there was a reason that the glasses are shaped the way they are.
Yep, that's right.
Hold the volume they hold and so on. So I've recently become a kind of a glass snob. So if there's a beverage, I'm drinking it out of the proper glass, and people are like, my dad would show up. I saw him drinking. He was drinking orange juice because he stayed over. He usually stays over now. We got the kids. He's drinking orange juice out of a fucking wine glass. It was just eating my soul, dude.
Yeah. So
Dude, you're killing me here.
it's funny you bring that up. When you order a beer in Germany, everywhere I've been, each beer has a specific glass. Like a lot of times it'll be the glass made by that beer company. So they have their specific glasses, and the beer always comes in that glass. Distinct glass for each type of beer.
That's how you do it, man. Yeah, I've got a little low ball glass here. I got some Russell's Reserve. Nothing fancy, but I've had worse. So that's what I'm sipping on. Nice, help put me to bed when I'm ready. So, all right, man.
Russell's
well, listen. I want to say this first and foremost. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything that you do. We appreciate you. My family appreciates you. I always try to teach the kids. A lot of the older generation too. They've got those hats, right? The Vietnam vets.
Mm-hmm.
And with my son, I started young. It's like, listen, when you see anyone that has this really cool hat, you just shake their hand when you get a chance.
Yeah.
You just say thank you for your service. So I try to teach them young to do that. But we appreciate you here at the Paddy Wagon. I appreciate you, and I assure you, anyone that's listening to this, appreciates everything you've done and continue to do.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. It's it's my pleasure. I really enjoy doing what I do, but I do appreciate the sentiment.
Awesome. So you provided a lot of details, man. Sometimes people, they just come on and we chat and we have a good talk, but you gave me a lot to work with, but you had one thing that I want you to elaborate on, because I don't know if I see myself in what you said, or it was just it was interesting. So I think it was, and I wrote it down here. I'm a bit of an anomaly. I'm a senior Army leader, but I have a creative personality style, and I am low in conscientiousness.
Yep.
This is typically the opposite of successful military leaders.
Yeah.
So that was I thought that was a well-crafted sentence. Can you in your words, right? You don't fit the mold, but what is it that you possess that has made you successful all of these years?
Yeah, it's a great topic, and I'm very aware of personality characteristics. So just to sort of walk our way into this, I'm writing a book called "You Don't Know Shit About Leadership" right now. Should be out in January.
It's a great name.
So what I do is I'll just talk about a small portion, but I look at leadership from the lens of evolutionary theory, from the lens of neuroscience, from the lens of personality, complexity theory. So I've been studying the 5-factor model for personality theory for a long time. And that's kind of where my comment came from. As you study that thing, you can find papers that correlate certain personality traits with success in leadership positions, and there's, with leadership positions in the military. And the two most highly correlated with success in the military are conscientiousness and extroversion, right? So me, personally, I am fairly low in conscientiousness. And conscientiousness is industriousness and orderliness, someone who's very organized and their brain won't let them come off a task until the task is done. It stresses them out. And, funny enough, that I'm the opposite of that. Like because I lean high in openness or high in creativity, I'm more interested in the novel, ambiguous task. And if you give me a checklist or here's the rules we have to follow, as crazy as it sounds, I'm completely disinterested in that. And I've had to find ways to overcome that and just do the things I don't like to do, but at the end of the day, when you're a commander in the military, you sort of have, if you're clever, you can find ways to leverage your strengths, which I think, frankly, all leaders should do, is start with your personality style, but figure out what you're really good at and just drive into that as hard as you can. And I'm good at looking at the big picture and figuring out what's missing, what needs to be in this picture that's not there, and then creating that, and thus the larger organization is able to succeed in a different way because there was a gap and now we filled it. But even that, and I'm doing it right now in Africa, even that, because I'm just creative and not conscientious, I can get us about halfway there. I can conceptualize this thing and put, interesting stuff together that makes sense. But I lose interest about halfway through that. Once it starts to become putting all the details in place in the minutia, I need somebody else to do that because I'm purely interested in the creative side. And I've just been able to leverage success by being really good at being creative and getting those solutions, and then forging a team that can take that thing all the way to the finish line. So I fully admit, there are certain things I suck at, and I will shy away from those things until you force me to get into them. But I do have strengths, in other areas, being open, being creative, finding the gap, that if we had a thing that nobody even sees yet, but if we had this thing, we'd be, incrementally better.
Okay. I like that. And so my world is the corporate world. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, and it's, they're one and the same, right? A leader is a leader, and there's different qualities that leaders have. But, when I look at a leader, it's like, do I believe this person? Do I believe that they believe what they're telling me? And I think that's important. I believe that a leader should have somebody's back. And that's important for me, is I want my leader, my manager, to have my back. But one of the things, and I think about it a lot, is leaders know their own shortcomings. Because let's not kid ourselves. We all have things that there are other people that are better than me at this task, or these 3 tasks. I think an effective leader acknowledges that and puts somebody in charge of those things. So like you said, I'm not a checklist guy, but I got guys that are checklist guys. I've got girls that are, that can kind of do these things for me. And then that is where the team comes together. And so you've got people that are learning from you, you're learning from them, because I tell you what, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you may not show it, right? Right? We, what do they say in Saving Private Ryan? Gripes You gripe up, you don't gripe down.
Yeah, that's right.
But I do believe in your head somewhere, you learn from the people that kind of report into you, right?
Yeah, and I'll be honest. So because I've studied the personality model so much, I think it's valuable, and it's worked for me. That when I get to a new organization, I'll pull the people in, and I'll just be honest with them. I'll kind of sketch out the 5-factor personality model and explain it. If you're high here, this means that. If you're low here, and while I'm doing that, you can't help but sort of see yourself in that model. So I know they're sort of doing the fuzzy math on that sounds like me. And then I'll be like, look, I suck right here. I can do this, but I suck at it. This is where I'm going to excel. So what I need you to do is be the checklist guy. And, there's going to be certain people that if you ask them, they're like, man, I love checklists. Like every time I put a check mark on something, my brains get a firing dopamine. So you find that person, and you can build a team off of various personality characteristics. And that's, back to evolution. Tribes needed different types of people. You needed the crazy psychopath who would fight anybody and go after a mammoth. Like, not real good when you're just in a, normal, peaceful society, but those people still have a role, right? You need the people that'll work
100%.
15, 16, 20 hours a day trying to find roots and tubers for everybody to eat. Like, you need all types of people. So I just, let my team know, hey, if we're going to succeed, then somebody's got to do this, somebody's got to do that. It also ties back to like, what's the scope of the problems for each person in this organization? Because as a commander, especially as a brigade commander, fairly high level, I don't want to be worrying about, did Joe Snuffy go to the dentist? Like that's not my problem to solve. My problem is to solve, what do we look like a year from now? How can I leverage what we do to make the division or the larger organization a better, more effective combat unit? So scoping the problems and making sure you're solving the problems that should be in your lane and not somebody else's problem is a big deal.
Yeah, I'm a checklist guy. I'm a guy that I like to stay in my lane, and I believe, for example, so I'm a recruiter, right? I hire a lot of people. They're very high level folks at the organization I work for as well. And then some entry level folks. So it's across the board, but I need, certain tasks go to certain groups. And so what I have a lot on my team is, well, this other group, I don't like the way they do it. I don't trust them. So I do it myself. That is not me.
Yeah.
I have my job. You have yours, and I believe in you. So when I assign this task to you, if I need something, I'll check in on you. But you will do your part of this, and we're going to do it together. We're going to get across the finish line together. We're going to hire a great senior executive, but we're going to each do our part. I'm not, if somebody needs help, I'm here for you. But you needing help because I didn't get around to it, no excuse. Get it done. So, and it's, I don't know if that's right, but that's how I am, is I believe that everyone has a job to do.
Yep. Well, it's scoping your responsibility and then making sure people are clear and accountable for their piece of that, because it's a multifaceted problem. It's just not like you going out and finding people and hiring them, right? So scoping the depth of the responsibility. And then sometimes you find yourself, like, based on your personality, not you, but the general you may find yourself in a job that you're not suited for. Like the things that you're asking them to do are just unreasonably stressing them out, because their personality characteristics don't match that job. That's something that, people need to be cognizant of, because somewhere there's a job that leverages your personality strengths, that doesn't make you straight. If you're not a checklist guy and all you do is checklists, or you're an extrovert and I stick you in a cubicle by yourself and it's 12 hours a day, like it's not that the work is hard, but it just doesn't match your personality, and you could flourish somewhere else if you were somewhere that leveraged your personalities. But I don't think people are aware of that. They just assume, I have to have a job. This is the job I have. This is how I pay my bills. I hate it for X, Y, and Z reasons. Well, you might want to find a new job that leverages your personality. Yeah. And unfortunately, people just aren't aware of their personality traits sometimes.
I'm a look in the mirror guy, man. I know my traits, and I'm sure there's some ones that a therapist could dig out of me.
Yeah,
But
you and me
it's
both.
yeah, I'm an extrovert, and me and cubicles, we don't get along. It's not my
Yeah,
thing. Uh,
and it's not because the
I'd rather be
cubicle is
talking over
inherently
a cubicle
bad.
wall.
Yeah, you got to talk over the wall. You
There's
got to
people that
pass
just sit down.
notes,
Yeah,
make
man. And
weird
then there's people
noises, so
like you take
people
a
wonder.
software developer,
Yeah, yeah, and they're just
put
suited
a
to.
coder, and they just listen. Feed me
Yeah,
some Mountain Dew and give me some code to write, and I'll sit
that's
here all
right.
damn day.
I'll eat Twizzlers and drink Mountain Dew, and I am happy. Don't even talk
Yeah,
to me
buddy.
because I don't want to talk to you. I'll give you the code when I'm done.
Exactly.
Tell me what you need next and go away. Like that's fine.
Yep.
Like
There you go.
I'm perfectly happy
Yep.
to work with people like that.
So walk me through just high level, right? When did you? How'd the military become a thing for you? Did you come in as an officer? Kind of walk me
Yeah.
through when you were like, you know what, this is what I'm going to be doing.
So before I joined, like in 1990 was Desert Storm, right? And I remember that happening, and I'm kind of listening on the radio because it's before the internet. So I'm listening, and I'm like, man, that something was in me, something was compelling. Like, man, I feel like I should join the Army. That feels like somewhere I should be. I didn't join right away. I kept doing other stuff. I worked in hospitals as a cardio tech because I could read EKGs because I was a paramedic at one point. So at some point, I just decided, you know what, this is boring as shit. I have got to find something better to do. And the military was always appealing and nobody in my family's been in the military, so I really had no experience or knowledge about what it was. Very foreign to me, but I just said, you know what, I'm doing this. Went, got recruited, joined in 1995, which sounds like, a long time ago. It was a long time ago. But so joined up, went to basic training in Oklahoma, but then was stationed in Fort Carson in Colorado, which was great. And kind of lucked into having a supervisor, eventually, not right away, but having a supervisor that saw some potential in me. And basically, because I was enlisted at the time, basically saw, hey, you know what, man? You need to be an officer. You're smart enough. You can do this. And sort of forced me to go to officer candidate school. And I use that term because I'm low in conscientiousness, right? And there's before computers, so there's a lot of typewriter filling out forms and doing a bunch of stuff that was completely uninteresting to me.
Right.
And I liked being in the Army, but that was another level of doing administrative stuff that I wasn't interested in. But he basically forced me to sit down and do all that stuff. So I did, got selected for officer candidate school and got commissioned in 1998. But had it not been, and this is like one of my biggest leadership lessons I try to share with people, I could have been a very average soldier. I could have done the 4 years and get out. I could have done who knows what. Had it not been for that one leader who said, you know what? Nah, bro, you're doing this. You've got potential. You're doing it. As much I wasn't fighting him, but I was being lazy, right? So just
Right.
here's what we're going to do. Your ass is going to sit right here, fill out this paperwork. And because I had a little bit of a push and a little bit of encouragement from someone I respected, I'm 30 years later, I'm a senior colonel in the Army. So that's a huge deal. And I really want, when I try to develop leaders, I like to share that story and be like, this leader could be you. You've got to do this stuff for people, and don't make the assumption that they see in themselves what you see in them. And sometimes the process is very opaque. Like, I don't know how to do that, but you could find out as a leader. You can help them. So it's a big deal. That, like, I credit that guy with basically my whole career.
Good. What do you know what he saw in you? Right. There's the intelligence thing. You just said that, right? This guy knows that I can do more. What do you think he saw in you? Because what I'm hearing is like, he's a little standoffish kid. He doesn't know what he wants to do. Right. You said the term lazy, but this guy saw something in you. What do you think he saw, or what do you know he saw?
So I was lazy for that specific task, but in general, I really I was stupid about how much I love the Army. So just doing, wanting to do the thing. So if one of my sergeants told me to do the thing, I was doing the damn thing, whatever it was.
Okay.
Even like learning, because the unit was in the middle of a move, and of course the Army is, we're always behind in technology, but we're always trying to upgrade our technology, usually to like 10 years behind everybody else, but it's still an upgrade. So being able to go through a manual and figure out how to use a piece of equipment and then teach other people how to use it, because that was a little more my style. I was very comfortable doing that. Taking SOPs and rewriting them. It wasn't a ton of like hard thinking work, but what it was being proactive and helping the unit out. Like, again, solving that thing we don't have that nobody's really talking about, but we need it. Just doing that kind of stuff and being reasonably intelligent and hardworking. And like, I was brand new, didn't know anything about the Army. He's like, hey, I need you to do an inventory. Go down to the motor pool, and because our vehicle just came up. It's a big tracked vehicle, so it was full of all kinds of random pieces of gear. I didn't know what any of that stuff was. So there's like nomenclatures for every piece of gear in the Army. So he said, go do an inventory. And fine, I took a legal pad and I just wrote what the thing looked like, which it was not helpful at all. He didn't say that, but because I just didn't know how to do that, I just did what I thought was appropriate and just made a long green pole or, a strange shaped bag with zipper. So,
15 fucking green boxes.
Yeah, I don't know what these things are.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Well, okay. So, keeping it simple then, right? We've got, we're all over the place here, right? What is an effective leader? What are the traits that they possess? Because I hear these things about you, and then there's this leader that saw something in you, and now that you're decades into your career, you have produced, I guess we'll say, for lack of a better term, produced more leaders, and you've interacted with more leaders, and you've reported to these leaders. Is there a trend? Is there a theme to what makes somebody an effective leader, or is it truly all over the place and it really is dependent upon one's personality?
To some extent, there's different types of effective leaders, because really, at the end of the day, what you want from a leader is, can I make this organization go in the direction it's supposed to go without causing too much friction within the people? So that can still be an effective leader. But if you want an optimal leader, then what you want is, can I make this organization go in the right direction and beyond, in a direction nobody saw but is good? And can I make the people in this organization actually want to stay in this organization? And are they saying, hey man, you should come to this organization, it's the best? So I'll just focus on that. Like, those people that are able to do that, those leaders, have a few characteristics. And one is they understand themselves really well. Like I said, it's, there's certain things I'm not great at. Some things I'm good at, but understanding yourself really well, because you're going to leverage the people that work for you in a certain way, because you know yourself, and you're going to help them help you understand problems in the right way. And then you got to understand the people that work for you. So I think, I don't want to say an immature leader, but there's certain types of leaders who haven't bridged the gap. That leadership is a lot about psychology. So the team that works for you, especially the people you interact with fairly frequently, the faster you can figure out what makes them tick and what motivates them and what demotivates them, the more efficient they will be doing the things that need to be done, to the point that you don't need to tell them anymore. And I've got a whole framework that kind of articulates this, but knowing yourself and knowing the people that work for you individually, and then knowing them as a group, because a cohesive team will sort of have this group identity. And if you're fairly charismatic or at least convincing, then that group will start to take on some of your personality characteristics, like your attitude, sort of how you interact with them. They will start to mirror that back to you, and they'll mirror it back to the teammates within the team. So if you're kind of like, I try to be a little bit lighthearted, but if there's work to do, we're doing the work. We can still have fun, but this has got to get done, so we're doing it.
Yep.
And then understanding what is the situation or the environment that we're in right now, because sometimes that paints, like sometimes the environment is high stress. We've got to get stuff done. You just got to do what I say because I don't have time to explain it. And sometimes the environment is, we do have time. I've got, this task is, we have 2 weeks to do it. Hey, let me pull you guys in. You guys are up for promotion to a leadership role. Let me pull you guys in and explain what exactly is going on here and why this is important. So there's like the best leaders I've seen take time to sort of give you the vignettes of helping you understand themselves in a leadership role. Here's why I'm doing this. Here's why I asked that question. Because a lot of times you get questions you're not really sure, but they know something you don't. So painting
Right.
context for people and painting reality is a huge part of leadership too. And I say it's probably true everywhere, but in the military, soldiers are always looking for indications of what is reality. So if you make them do something that's uncomfortable, they're going to infer some reality. This task sucks. That means he's the one who told us to do it. He probably sucks too, because I don't understand why I'm doing this task. It doesn't make sense. If you take the opposite role and say, look, this is what I know. Here's why this task is important. This is part of what you guys do. I need you to do a good job. It's important to the organization. It's important to your team. If you take a little bit of time to explain what's going on and why it's important, then you create this neurotransmitter, this dopamine elevation, this serotonin elevation, this oxytocin, which at the end of the day has the effect of bonding teams together and helping you forge trust. And once they actually trust you, there's a whole process. But once you get to sort of the end of, they trust me, I built cohesive teams, we're good at what we do, there's sort of an irony of, I went from a very direct hierarchical leadership style to now the team is so proficient and independent, my leadership role is sort of diminished, and all I have to do is sort of infer a direction, and the team just does it. And you've probably been on teams like that, where one is, I got to go to the boss to ask what to do next. And the other team is like, no, I know what he wants. I know exactly what he's going to say. We're going to do this.
I had a boss once, really good piece of advice. And it just, she was pissed. I forget what I did. I was pissed. She was pissed at me. I was pissed. And she said, Mike, I don't mind. I'm always here to help. I don't mind answering questions for you. So I actually like answering questions. I like that you ask questions. But I don't particularly love that you come to me with things that you can figure out yourself. The answers are here. You know where they're at, but you're choosing to ask me.
Yep.
And I would like you to start to trust the process a little bit more, and so that you know the things you need to do. So again, ask me whatever you want. Just don't ask me the shit that you can find on your own.
Such a great
And then
point.
she apologized. And I said, no, you know what? No, don't apologize for that. That's fair. That's very fair. And I knew I could have found it there. And don't know why I reached out to talk to her, but it was a fair assessment. I looked in the mirror and I said, I'm going to be better at what I do. And I know a lot of people don't do that. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I'm not bragging, but that's something I try to do well, is like, if I try ownership, I take ownership over stuff. And if I mess up, I want my managers and bosses to know, hey, just a heads up, fucked up a little bit here. You may hear about this. Here was the thought process. Here's the documentation. Here's the things that I know. And I guess we'll maybe wait and see.
Yeah.
You try to jump out ahead of things because you know something's coming. With you mentioning kind of assigning task, I've always wanted to know, and I do believe this. I've never been in the military, but you see the movies, and you know it's true, right? You've got your basic training, and hopefully you can answer honestly. But I am of the belief that, right, correct me if I'm wrong, you go through basic training, you've got your foot locker, you've got your bed. These things are supposed to be a certain way. This foot locker will be clean at the foot of your bed. This bed will be made fucking immaculate. You could bounce a dime off of it. All right. So, yes or no, that is true.
That is true.
Okay. Now, the next question. How many times has the bed been perfect or the gun been assembled perfect and the foot locker was perfect and the drill sergeant comes up and he's like, nope, fuck it, not good enough, redo it? That's got to happen all the time,
Sure.
right?
It's a psychological technique.
And the person's going, it was right. I know it was right. But at this point, you're, maybe the sleep's not there. You're questioning, okay, I know I did it right. How long does it take for them to pick up on what's actually being done? Because it's not about the bed. It's not about the foot locker. Right. It's not about the rifle being clean. It's about a repetitive task. This is what I think. It's a repetitive task that I need you to know how to do in your sleep. And sometimes you just need to do it because I said do it. Is that, am I on to something?
I mean, yeah, that's 100% right. I can think of like 2 or 3 examples from that long ago where that's exactly what happened. And you get smart after a while because you go to more than one school. And the first school, you're just like, man, I somehow I screwed that up. I don't see how I screwed it up, but I'll do it again. And that's part of the drill, right? It's like, you missed something. You really didn't, but you missed something. Do it again. And so the next time you do it, you're 10 or 20% more vigilant on, this has got to be perfect. But eventually you catch on to the game. And because I went to basic training, then you go to a AIT where you learn whatever your specific skill is. And I went to OCS. And OCS is where, people in OCS have been in the Army 6 to 12 years, somewhere around there. So they've played these games before. So it's not quite as strict as basic training, but it's similar in some ways. So there's inspections and you got to clean stuff and set stuff up, and you just know, like, hey, we got to do this. Our weekend pass depends on, did we clean this right? And it's the first time we're going to get a weekend pass. You know what? There's a good chance they're not going to pass us just to set some conditions where we try harder next time. So, I mean, not to give away the secrets, but at some point it's kind of just a game where they're leveraging this psychological dominance over you. Like, no matter what you do, you're going to fail. You got to try harder, do better, be more detail oriented. And at some point you will pass. And because at some point you passed and you worked that much harder to get there, that's kind of a psychological boon for you. I finally did it. I sucked so many times before, but now I'm good.
Okay. Well, I won't hold you to this one. You don't have to answer me. So that leads me to believe that maybe, just maybe, sometimes those weekend passes weren't there in the first place. The illusion of the weekend pass was there. And you were fucking failing anyway, and you were going to be here this weekend. But I also think that that's a good life lesson, which is, hey, shit doesn't go your way all the time. As a matter of fact, some things we're looking forward to are ripped away from us. Sometimes it's our fault. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it just is. And so, again, you don't have to. It's audio only, right? No one's gonna look at your face and go, "That's son of a."
No. I mean, there's some merit to that, right? Because if you think about it from their perspective, if these yahoos don't have a weekend pass, then the chance of them getting in trouble over the weekend is almost zero, which makes my life easier. So there's probably some advantage to the other side on that one too.
Nice. So, being an officer side, leadership's just part of the deal, right? Officer leadership. One of the things you also mentioned in kind of your notes to me was conducting research and formulating original leadership concepts, which when I hear that, I think, well, maybe what we're doing right now isn't working, or maybe there's a way to do this better. And again, we've talked about what makes somebody a successful leader, and it's kind of all over the place, right? It fits in with our personalities. But what did you see or not see that led you to kind of come up with the program you have? Because I'm thinking to myself, if I'm going the route you went, there are some things I see that could be better, All right. Is that fair? So, kind of walk me through, and again, the original leadership concept part. What was missing?
The journey on that was it's been I've been interested in this for a long time, but I was always sort of driven to understand leadership. I'm inspired by seeing the movies of inspirational leaders, and of course, I mean that does it to all of us. But I was really drawn to that, and over the course of my career, so part of what we teach people is you're always learning from your leaders, good or bad. You're learning from your leaders. So over the course of my career, I knew that, hey, if I need to understand how that leader makes me feel. Do I want to work harder for that leader, or do I want to work, less hard? Do I want to just do the minimum? So to me, that's a curious concept, because I'm the same person every time, but for some reason, that guy makes me want to do all the stuff, makes me want to try harder and exceed expectations. This guy makes me nervous and uncomfortable, and makes me, because I'm scared to show the wrong thing to this person, makes me want to kind of just do the minimum, because I don't want to risk a stressful situation. So to me, that's a really curious phenomenon. So that's kind of, I guess, where it started.
And that is the summary leadership model?
So I'm playing around with the names. It started out with the P4. That's too generic. Okay. Summary leadership, but I'm starting. I've got a couple books going, not to sound like ADD, but ballistic leadership model is what I settled on. That one was not trademarked or anything, and I'm an artilleryman, so I'm drawn to ballistic trajectories and things like that. So it's called the ballistic leadership framework.
I'm listening to you talk. You mentioned movies earlier. And things that are inspiring. When I think inspiring, I think speeches. I think things you see in movies. And I think things in movies exist because they happen in real life. Sure. Of course, for movies, we make them a little cooler than they are. But listening to what you're saying, there's a movie, it's jumping out of my head right now. And stop me if, you're from Texas, so I don't know how much we like hockey down there. But the movie Miracle,
never
so
heard
good.
Of it. Is hockey a sport? What is that? Is it a game?
I think they just skate. They're like skating around, floating on ice. But Miracle, right? You yes or no? Have you seen the movie?
No.
Oh man!
Is it about the USA versus Russia Miracle on Ice?
Yes.
Okay.
It's about that.
Maybe
team.
I have, but I'm not a hockey. My wife's from Canada.
Well, you remember this part. Oh yeah.
She's probably seen it.
There you go. She's seen it. So there's this part of the movie, and I'll find it and send it. Actually, I'm not going to send it to you because it doesn't do it justice if you don't see the whole movie. And basically, they put the Olympic team together, they get it together, but it's just a team. At this point, it's just a bunch of individuals that they don't know their purpose yet. Well, I want to play for Team USA. And in the movie, they get their asses kicked. And this coach works them. And he works them. And he has them skating. I don't know what they're called with hockey. I would call them suicide drills, right? If you're thinking of a basketball court, right? You're going to go back and forth and back and forth. And he just, very simple question, who do you play for? And the guys keep, University of Boston, fucking do it again. Whistle, skate again. And it's 15 minutes where you see the assistant coaches, which I actually believe this is kind of how it happened. The assistants are like, dude, you're going to kill these guys. So be it. Again, it's finally, who do we play for? USA. And right, that's where they finally get, what am I trying to do here? And what am I trying to get out of you guys? I don't care who you used to play for. This is who you play for now. This is the goal, and this is the objective that we have, and here's why we're here. Maybe we don't win, but they're going to know who the hell we are when we play. And it's that scene in that movie jumps out to me because as you're talking, I'm here. That's all I'm picturing is, how do we get to the point where you're like, this is what I'm trying to build? And that's what I hear.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's the cohesion part, right? Because in my model with cohesion, one of the ways, and it's easy in the military, but one of the ways is shared hardship and sort of a function of the number of hours you spend with someone. So in the military, we do exercise, physical training every day. So if the leader is not there with the rest of the team sharing that hardship, that's a problem. And people notice. They won't ever tell you. They might tell you, but you need to be there. So shared hardship builds bonds. The shared understanding of, what we're supposed to be doing, big deal. But then, and you notice this is in the military because you're forced in these situations, but I've built up really strong bonds with people that, because of the circumstances in the military, you deploy, you're with the same people all day, every day. And some of those days is scary as shit. Some of it is, most of it, frankly, is boring. So, this is one of the things I noticed, like the more time you are just forced to be with people, and not in a bad way, but it just is what it is, right? Eventually you're going to, and it won't take long, you're going to run out of work related topics to talk about. And hey, man, does your wife do this? My wife does that. It's so annoying, or whatever. And yeah, my mom's doing this. She's sick. And you get into sharing this personal information. And because you're together so much, you end up having these conversations and you learn about each other. And in the military, it's not uncommon for, people that work together. Like, I know where that guy's from. I know what he likes, what he dislikes. I know what his favorite food is. I know what his wife's favorite food is. I know what they like. I know what their hobbies. I know what they like to do on the weekends. I know what books he reads. So that's part of cohesion. And you've got to sort of work your way through these steps to get to that point where I will do anything to make this team succeed. But again, it all has to start with trust, right? So there are trust promoting behaviors and trust eroding behaviors. So you got to be cognizant of that as a leader, because you may not be aware that what you're doing is eroding trust, because you could be having a conversation with person A and person B, C, D, and E are watching. And because you berated somebody or treated somebody poorly, you eroded trust with 7 people, not just the one who you thought you were doing a great leadership thing by being a little inappropriate with them or whatever. But yeah, so to me, cohesion is a big deal.
Do we correct people behind closed doors, or do we do it in front? Like, what's the right way in this situation?
Well, there's different ways, right? So
Depends.
Behind closed doors, depending on what it is. If it's not something that's egregious, then it's probably worth. And it could be yourself, right? It could be, hey guys, I want to share. I think I did this. I think it was wrong. But if you're going to correct someone, you could use it as a way to do it with the group and be like, hey, we made a mistake, or this guy made a mistake. Not a huge deal, but let's kind of talk about it. Let's tease out what was going on here, because I want to be on a good team as much as you guys do. So I just don't think this type of thing is conducive to having the strong team that we all want. So let's just talk about it. If you guys think it's a big deal, we'll set some standards here and say we're not doing that as a team. If we think it's not a big deal, we'll just accept it that way too. But there's lots of ways to get after that. I think the more open you are with the team and transparent, that's like, to me, like, just there's some things I'm not going to share, but for the most part, I like to be clear that, bro, I'm on this team as much as you guys are. I may be the leader, but I want to be awesome too. So if we're going in a direction that doesn't make us awesome, somebody, and I'm the one who decided it, you guys got to tell me. Like, just be honest. Like, if this is stupid, you got to tell me. Because that doesn't, that doesn't always happen.
Are you guys like me and never left your hometown? Perhaps you moved away and never looked back. Maybe you moved and for whatever reason found yourself right back where you started. Remain, Roam, Return is the weekly podcast hosted by friends Damien and Christian, who chat with people who have done all of the above. Damien was raised in Nebraska and now resides on the West Coast. Christian apparently likes corn and cows so fucking much he never left. I don't know. But join these two really funny guys as they bring on people from all over to discuss just what it's like to remain, roam, or return. Check them out on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. So you said a couple minutes ago, you said the word scared, right? So, me not being in the military, I can think of a million reasons why somebody in the military would be scared. So I'm not asking anything personal, but on the topic of scared, if I'm scared, I'm scared. I'm scared of this situation. I'm scared of what's coming. I'm scared of what happened. I'm scared of where I'm at right now, whatever. But there's a fear in me. If the group is scared, how does that work with the group? Does everyone realize the other people are scared, and that fear and that being scared goes away and morphs into something else? Again, it was just the way you said it that I'm wondering, how does fear and how does being scared work in groups with people that are trained in situations like you would train them for? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
I think so. So if you're scared, you have scanned your environment and you've detected a threat of some sort. That's generally what being scared, like fear, is related to your environment. Not always, 'cause sometimes it's an abnormality in your brain, but it's anxiety, right? So generally, something in your environment is causing you to have elevated cortisol, to have this fear reaction, this anxiety reaction. So as a leader, you want to be cognizant of the fact that is this an appropriate time to be scared? Because if the team is nervous or anxious or scared, you have to do the math. Like, is that an appropriate reaction to this situation? And if it is, then it's really on you to somehow convey to them that either the training we have is going to get us through this, or I am mitigating this threat to the best of my ability. It depends on what it is, right? Or we are going to come together and overcome this obstacle, whatever it is. So there's, scared can mean a lot of things in the military. There's obstacle courses that make people nervous. Okay, fine. There's leaders. This is probably the most common one, actually, in the military, being that we're not in combat all the time, is the sort of anxiety that is natural especially when you're junior, talking to someone of a much higher rank than you. Just a simple thing, right? But it leads to anxiety. So their behaviors are different. They're really not themselves because they're trying to mitigate the threat of a dominant individual by acting a certain way. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. So
no, it does.
So it's incumbent on that like what I try to do is if I know I'm like the senior person and the people are much more junior to me, your behaviors should exude things that signal safety. Like I'm a colonel, but that doesn't mean I'm a scary colonel. I'm a normal human being just like you. Our scope of responsibility is different, but that's really it. So there's, and then when you get into combat, your team is looking to you to paint reality for them. A lot of times, because it's confusing, they won't know if they should be scared or not. And the more unfamiliar they are with the terrain, the more it has the chance to make them nervous or anxious or scared. So they'll be looking to you like, because you're experienced, should I be scared? And if you're scared, your team is definitely going to be scared. So you have to be careful.
So they're like looking around like, is it cool to be scared now? Or
yeah. Well,
is the group scared, or is it just me?
Yeah, then I'm scared shitless. So it's rarely a good technique to say, guys, I'm scared. As a leader, like that's not a good idea.
It doesn't work.
Yeah,
you lose that trust that you're trying to build.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's it's much harder because everybody's looking at you. And you might be scared, but you don't want to infect the rest of your team with being scared. You've got a task to do. War is inherently scary. Okay, fine. Yeah. Deal with it. You got a mission. Let's do the freaking mission.
Nice. So, kind of on that note, I think of, you hear things like chance. I don't like the word chance. I think of opportunity and, failure. I don't believe in the word failure unless you're quitting. Like, I give up, I think is failure. And I think as long as you're willing to push and you're willing to fight, I don't think anyone's failing. I think if you're looking for answers or trying to solve a problem, you're not failing. You can get those answers wrong. Let's try it again. That's a good trait to have, right? So, not believing in failure, I think that we encounter challenges. I think everything's a challenge. And you talked about leadership learned the hard way. I think it's how you said it. I think it was leadership learned the hard way. And that you've kind of you've learned about these hard ways through your different positions that you've held. What are some of these things that you've seen through your growth in the military that you would refer to like that is leadership learned the hard way?
So it essentially equates to ineffective leadership that doesn't get you what you thought it was going to get you because you're inexperienced. You have to, and it's, it's human dynamics, it's social systems. It's complexity, right? It's hard to know what behavior to inject into this complex system to make it do the thing you want it to do. So you're going to fail at some of those. It doesn't mean it's catastrophic, but if you're ineffective, then you have to sort of go back and say, okay, this didn't work. And if you're smart and you're keeping a running estimate as a leader of how am I going to lead, that sort of goes in your back pocket of that was an ineffective technique for this team in this situation for me as a leader, and use failure as a feedback mechanism so that you've learned from it. And I think any person that's been working for 10, 20, 30 years, well, I wouldn't say any person, but a very introspective person can, if you say, because I'd like to do this in interviews for job interviews, right? Tell me your biggest failure and how that sort of changed the way you see yourself as a leader or the way you see yourself in the Army, because it's kind of indicative of how they approach problems. I'd say majority of people, I'll just put it this way. If the way I see it is, if I ask you that question and you don't immediately say, oh gosh, I've got a lot of failures, let me think of a good story to tell, then you're probably not paying attention. Nobody's so good that they just never have ineffective leadership skills. So it should be, man, let me sift through my failure Rolodex and find one that's appropriate for this venue. To me, that's a good leader. That's someone who's always watching themselves, always learning from mistakes, and is happy to articulate that because they know it doesn't mean I'm a bad leader because I can articulate a failure. It means I noticed that I failed and I learned from that, and I'm a better leader because of it.
Which in turn is not failing, right?
Exactly.
There you go. Nice. That's what I was getting at is, because it's a very common interview question. I think about that. I'll ask that a lot of times, and it's not, you don't care what the answer is.
Right.
You want to see how they work through. You want to see how they get to that.
Yeah.
And, is a failure. But one of the things I want to hear is, well, what'd you do to get through that? Right. Exactly. Tell me about taking that failure, right, and turning it into something else. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's the same thing. And people, they get stuck on that. And I'll tell you another one, this trips people up. Tell me a little bit about yourself. It's amazing how many people cannot answer that simple question. I don't give a shit what your answer is. Just tell me something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's one of those things they don't really, because as you ask me, I could start rambling on some stuff, but you've got to have sort of a narrative, especially for an interview, man. Like you're pretty sure that question's going to come up. Have a compelling narrative to tell that indicates what you care about, what your sort of personal priorities are, how you approach leadership. People just don't think of it that way.
Yep. So these things that you teach, these classes, just this program that you have, it's kind of bred from the military. Mm-hmm. I'm talking to you, and I can think of a million ways this is applicable in the corporate world, which is, obviously something I think you're trying to do as well, is to realize these leadership traits, they cross borders. They're applicable everywhere. But like with the battlefield, for example, when when I have a day where shit falls apart, it's probably better than a day where shit falls apart on the battlefield. And so, like, what are some of the things that you can do, or, strategies? Because I think thinking on your feet and really being able to navigate a situation. Like, so for me, for example, I love hiring people in the military, right? And a good example I use is network, right? We've got a network engineer. This guy was a network. He was dealing with systems on the battlefield that those things needed to be 100% operational at all times. No questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not concerned about that person's ability to deal with stress when a couple servers or a network goes down for a bank. They'll get through it. That's not going to be a problem. And other people are like, well, it's the military. I don't understand how it's applicable here. I'm like, oh, it's applicable because I used to do IT work and I know what it feels like to know that when something breaks, everybody's looking at you for answers.
That's right.
This person is not going to have a problem in those situations at all, right?
Yep.
So you're dealing with life and death in a lot of these situations, and decisions can have a different outcome than me making a mistake on the computer or me making a mistake. What are some of the things that you teach? What are some of the things that you do that work when shit falls apart?
So what you're talking about is really perspective. But I like what you said about the network guys. So in the military, in the Army, it's the same way, right? As long as, because we use a lot of communication systems, as long as those things work, you're invisible. And that's good. Like, that's what you want. As soon as one of them fails, the person in charge of the communications is called the signal officer. Short is SIGO. So when you hear SIGO, somebody yells out SIGO, something's broken. And now you're the only person everybody cares about because you've got to get this system up and running because something's not happening. And when you set up a command post, the signal architecture is the first thing that has to go up because I can set up this tent or, the command post. If I can't talk, then it's just a house, right? It's not helpful.
Right.
So I was very clear with those guys, like, you are the priority. When we hit the ground, you are the priority. Whatever you need, you will get it. But you have to be set up before we can get the rest of this stuff set up. And because I was clear on the expectations, they got it. And they were like timing themselves and setting records every time. And they were proud. And I definitely, talked them up in front of the rest of the group. But that's one of those things. Like, there is no, I can't figure it out. Like, it has to work, period. You will figure it out.
Yeah, you're going to figure it out.
Yeah. So to address the rest of what you're asking there, it's perspective, right? So this is especially noticeable when you have senior folks and then much junior folks. Like in my last assignment, we had to take the team to Latvia and work up in the Baltics. Nothing really all that exciting, but we were there, and it was a Latvian base. And because we were the Americans, we had we had these big tents that everybody lived in, and it was by no stretch of the imagination austere compared to the hole in the ground or sleeping on the hood of my Humvee for 6 months in Iraq. But because I have a different perspective, my idea of austere is much different from the young soldiers. So to them, living in a tent with a small little shopette in a different country and not being around their family, like, to them, that was very stressful. It would have been very easy for me to say, you guys are stupid. You're being babies. This is nothing, man.
Right.
Back in my day, I could play that game.
Right.
I could play that game with them all day, but it didn't matter. Like, they don't want to hear that. What they want to hear is, we're working on getting it better, blah, blah, blah. You could do this, it's going to be okay. And eventually they kind of come around and, we're all soldiers, so they end up adapting pretty well. But that's sort of the perspective you're talking about. Like if the way I learned this skill to set up communication systems is that, man, it just has to work. Like there is no option. I can't leave until this works. And if I've got to make 100 phone calls or go get some more Cat 2 cable or whatever it's called, then that's what I got to do. So people will come into, I think that's what you're referring to, that people will come into jobs with already hardwired expectations about how they do the job.
Right.
And that's good. The other thing is we have to talk about the consequences of failure, because the consequences of failure in one context is very small, very minimal, whereas the consequences of failure and clearly in combat and things like that, consequences of failure are catastrophic and deadly. So when you're solving a problem, the level of attention and the level of stress commensurate with that task ought to be something that's related to the consequences of failure. Like if we don't do this, then we risk getting an artillery strike. Okay, let's put all our effort into that, because that's a big deal. If
Right.
if the risk is minimal, and I can't think of another good example, but if the risk is minimal, the consequences of failure are trivial. Okay, maybe not a big deal. You might want to make it a big deal as a leader for a lesson, but at the end of the day, you ought to know that if we fail at this, we're just gonna hit it again, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, that's. I watched a documentary, and one of the things, it was like you said your perspective, and it was I think it was called The Hornet's Nest, and it was father son combat videographers, photographers. They followed around, and I tell you what, I always mess up with brigade and platoon and squadron, and I don't know any of that. I just know that they progressively get bigger, and how many is under each, I don't know. But so they're following this group, we'll call them, and Humvees and some vehicles traveling down the road, and in the mountains. It was Afghanistan, and they're sitting there, and I hunt, so the sound of a round being fired in my direction is something I've heard before. Sounds like a power drill. You hear it, you get down. But in that situation, like, these guys are talking, and it was like a Dishka round or something. You just hear, zoom, and they found this round, and it was still hot, but they know the general direction of where it came from, and they're just standing around talking. And I'm like, what have these guys seen that makes that, like, because I'm running for cover. I'm like, all right, I think it was that way. I'm hiding behind this. And they're just standing around. And his thought process was, I remember he said, he's going to regret shooting at my guys. And they had the 50, I believe it was, on top of the Humvee, and they're just putting fire up on the hill, and they call in a strike, and F-18 or whatever it was comes and hits the hillside a couple times. Good bombs, and goes again. But his demeanor during all of this is so crazy to me, because he's just doing his job.
Mm-hmm.
He's just holding this round, and he's like, I don't appreciate when people shoot at my guys.
Yeah.
And I couldn't put myself there. And I won't put myself there, because I've not been there. But I just, again, the movie itself isn't even all that great. I thought there were a few parts that were good, but it was just that scene stands out for me, because I'm just, what have you seen, dude? Like, what have you seen that you just hang around like that? And I saw the round. It was a big ass round, and I'm like, you don't want to get hit by any of them, but that's one you really don't want to get hit by.
Yeah.
And just did his job, and it was effective leadership. He all he cared about was his guys.
Well,
to the point where he just stood there. He didn't give a shit.
Maybe. I mean, not giving a shit in some situations is appropriate. Sometimes it's not. So I haven't seen it. I can't say if what he did was foolhardy or logical. But I will say you'd be surprised at how desensitized you get to things like that fairly quickly. On a lot of the bases, they would routinely take incoming artillery from, insurgents or organizations. And the procedure is to put on your kit and go into one of the bunkers. But the math, because you get desensitized to it, the math is, well, there's a almost 0% chance I'm going to get hit. Not zero, but almost zero. Do I really want to throw on all my kit and go sit in a bunker for an hour? I've got work to do. So you get desensitized. People barely blink at this stuff because you get sort of normalized and habituated to this kind of thing. In that circumstance, it's risky because you could never predict where those things are going to hit. But people do get desensitized. If you're in a firefight, you definitely want to. If it's one round, who knows? Who knows? Those guys have been experienced. So if it's a sniper or somebody taking a shot, I don't know the circumstances, so I can't really make a judgment call one way or the other. But A, you do get desensitized, and B, you want to command the situation and make sure that you're. So again, if the leader would have ran around saying, "Oh, save me," and hid
Right,
under the vehicle, his probably not. But his guys will sort of feed off of that. And if he's like, "No, you just screwed up, son. We're going to find you," and his guys will feed off of that too. And if that's the approach he has every time, then even when he's not there, that's the approach his guys are going to take. Like. Just fucked up.
It was that's what I remember. It was just the demeanor and how he handled himself, and I guess desensitized. You probably do. It's crazy to think about that. Is that's something you get used to, and in like the military bases, right? Because there's got to be a ton where that stuff happens, right? A little alarm goes off or something, or you hear rounds coming in. I'm assuming
so much
some
anymore,
sort of
but
mortars. Or...
Yeah, back in the day, 10, 15 years ago, it was just common.
And then you just go about your business. Like, why am I going to waste my time? And again, you said do the math. It's unlikely that I'm going to get hit.
That's right.
So I'm just going to go about my business
until you get hit.
Oh man. Oh my goodness. So, there's so this is one of these episodes that could go 3 hours, right? Where's the balance with quick thinking, tactical versus long term, right? From a leadership standpoint, I forget what movie it was. Like we're playing chess, not checkers. What does your program do in kind of working through those situations? Like, here's what we have right now, but now let's think a few steps ahead.
Yeah, that's incumbent on the leader, and it comes with experience. I'll say the less adapted you are to environments like that, your immediate reaction is somebody's shooting at me. What do I do to not get shot? As you become more experienced and you become in charge of those people, you have to, okay, somebody's shooting at me. Where are they shooting from? Are there more there? Is this something that's trying to take our attention away from something else? What assets do I have that could respond to this quickly? Like you need to see the big picture. Okay, there's a thing happening, big picture. What can I do about it? I've got to know this fact, and this fact. So you're going to want to call out, I need a location. What assets do we have available? Can I shoot artillery at them? Do I have helicopters that I can come and employ against them? So just all kinds of stuff. If you don't have any of that, can I use smoke to obscure their sight of us? There's so many more variables as a leader so it's because it's a problem, right? Hey, somebody just injected a problem into your day. So, okay, what do I need to know about this problem? What assumptions do I make? What facts do I have? What are the constraints I'm under? What limitations do I have? What's the most effective way to make this problem go away? What does this problem mean in the broader context of the region or the war? Does my boss need to know about this? Like, there's just lots of factors that you sort of just come naturally once you see it a few times, but you got to see it for the bigger picture of what it is.
Okay. So yeah, a little experience kind of, and again, each situation's different.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's not a one-stop shop or, hey, this applies to everything, right?
Yeah. And
Assess the situation and go from there.
you may, so just as an example, it's okay, somebody's shooting at us and there's rounds coming in. Well, it would be helpful to know that 2 weeks ago, an America base got overrun by 50 terrorists, like, because you could be next. So if you don't have that context, you may not immediately go to lock everything down, guard the bases, get all the crew serve weapons up, get the lights on, start shooting illumination so we can find them. The context is important too.
Okay. All right. With your program, how's it going? Right? What's the roadmap for you with teaching folks? Because again, I've said it before, the leadership traits and the things that you've learned in the military, they're so applicable to just leaders across the world and things that they do. So what's the goal for you?
Yeah, the goal, because I'm truly passionate about leadership. I could talk about leadership all day. I'd be happy to sit with a corporate executive and just kind of give feedback all day. I know that, that's not what people do, but it wouldn't bother me at all because I love watching human interactions. And what was the outcome of this interaction? Did it steer the organization in the right direction or not? So basically what I'm doing, because since I've been in Germany and I'm at almost 30 years now, I've got to look at what's next for me. And I always sort of made the deal with myself that I'm not just going to go get a 9-to-5 job and just grind. And it's not interesting to me at all. I want to do something I really like, something I want to
I can tell you it's not interesting. It will not interest you.
Yeah, I believe you, man. So I'm kind of exploring right now. So I think some kind of leadership consulting is where I'll end up. At least that's my goal. So what I'm doing right now is exploring in depth the way I see leadership so that I can convey it well with not just theory, but practical, actionable techniques and behaviors. So what that means for me right now is I've played around with just making infographics, and because I'm creative, right? So I take concepts that aren't necessarily indicative or related to leadership, and I say, man, that's sort of a good model for understanding leadership. So I'm writing this book called "You Don't Know Shit About Leadership," and the sections is like 12 chapters, but the sections go from explaining that in America, broadly, we have a leadership problem. If you look at statistics for how effective leaders are, how are able to influence organizations in a positive way, the statistics don't paint a very good picture. It's generally that leaders aren't that good. People don't see their leaders as all that engaging, as helping the organization. There's a few reasons for that, but generally, I see it as a problem that people don't think their leaders are very good. So I through about 3 chapters, I paint out the statistics. I talk about why this may be true, the Dunning-Kruger effect, the Peter Principle. Peter Principle, we generally get promoted to the level of our incompetence, i.e., you are recognized for your skills and you keep getting promoted. Eventually, those skills are no longer relevant. It's a different skill set, and you don't have that skill set. So things like that, implicit leadership bias. So that's where I have a model of what a leader is in my head. You may be a good leader, but because you don't fit my model, I'm going to grade you as a bad leader. So it's just the way human beings see leadership based on what they understand as leader. And it may be wrong, but it's still the metric they use. And then the next section is 5 chapters where I talk, where does leadership come from? What are the biological, neurological, psychological roots of leadership? So evolution theory plays a huge role. Neuroscience plays a huge role. Personality theory, which I've referenced a few times here, to me is a huge role. It's a massive step in understanding how to be a better leader, is understanding your personality and the personality traits of your teammates. And I go to complexity theory. I've talked about that a few times too. Complexity theory is a great way to see the bigger picture on how agents in an organization interact and why that's important. And then I talk about some principles from game theory and how we can understand game theory, which is why people in certain situations in games, why they will act the way they do, what they're predisposed to do in certain conditions, and apply that to leadership. And then I talk about the ballistic leadership framework, which is a framework I came up with: people, partnerships, practice, and purpose. Walk through that, and I give some leadership vignettes. I give 10 vignettes, and here's the situation you find yourself in. Here's how to apply this ballistic model, and here's why it's valid based on evolution, neuroscience, personality, etc. So that's where I'm at right now. So I wanted to make sure that I had a construct I could translate into things that leaders should be doing, and it's grounded in some pretty rigorous science that's been around for decades.
Awesome. So you said you have I think you said my ADHD, and you referenced a couple things you have going on right now.
Yeah.
So is the book out yet?
No, it's
You Don't Know Shit About Leadership, which, by the way, is the best name ever.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a bit punchy. I wasn't sure if it was too punchy, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So that one is about 90% complete. I've got some line editing to do, and it'll be, I am estimating January it'll come out on Amazon. I've got another one
I'll be sure to pick up a copy of that one.
Yeah, if you send me your address, I can send you one. I'm happy to do that.
Awesome.
Next book is
now. Is it
leadership.
Are you doing the audiobook too, or are you doing? Because I like to read.
I haven't thought about the audiobook. I've never written a book, so I don't really know what I'm doing. But right now I'm working on the ebook and a paperback. If there's a demand for audiobook, we can do that too.
All right, cool. No, yeah, I would love a copy of the book. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, no problem.
You kind of stole one of my questions from earlier. Well, no, sorry. You answered one of my questions. I was going to ask about the most impactful person upon your journey, and I think you mentioned 3 minutes into the episode who that is. Is that a fair point? Yeah, kind of that leader that pushed you.
As far as the sort of initial impact, and I didn't really learn that leadership lesson for probably 10 years, but I'm like, wow, I'm where I am because of that one thing that one guy did. And I've had leaders I emulate along the way, but as far as who had the biggest impact, definitely him.
Nice, very nice. How do you continue to evolve as a leader, and what's the legacy you want to leave behind? Right? Are there people that you've touched to the point, and they're like, who affected my journey and who got the most out of me? Right, this guy right here. Right. What are you looking to leave behind?
Yeah. I hope that's true. So my leadership style is kind of, we will always work hard to do the right things. But the most important thing is how we treat each other and how we build this team cohesion. Because I think once you get there, literally, if you could build a team of people who are interested in doing the right thing and care about making the team succeed, it doesn't matter what task you throw at them. They'll do it. They'll do it with, enthusiasm. They'll want to get it done right. Because I've been on those teams, right? You could throw anything at us. Yep. And I've seen, for example, like they try to throw a task at a team. The team, we're not supposed to do that. That's not our job. So they give it to my team. Bam. I don't care whose job it is. You want me to do it, boss? I'm doing it. Let's get this done. So much to be said for before you get to, this is what my team does. Here's the task we're going to be good at. And I think a lot of people screw this up. They come in with, okay, if I'm a communications guy, let me explain to you how we're going to be successful at being communication guys. Well, let's back up a little bit. How are you going to build this team so they actually care about doing that? Because if you tell them that and you give them a detailed outline of everything they should do, and then you're an asshole, yeah, they're not going to do all that. They're going to do the minimum and just hope you don't yell at them. So it's important to establish that, man, we're in this together. And then beyond that, it just doesn't matter what you throw at that team. They're always going to get it done.
Right. Yeah, I get shit thrown on me at work. And I guess it's a compliment. But my manager a lot of the time is, hey, I know you won't bitch about this and it'll get done right. And before I get irritated, because I want to go, well, why is this being dumped on me? It is actually a compliment. And 100%. I say to myself, it will be done right. And I got this. Yeah. And it actually, the more challenging, the better. Because, again, a lot of times it'll be interacting with a tough hiring manager, somebody's, their expectations are not realistic. It's my job to get in there. And especially if they're, well, just for lack of a better term, maybe foul attitude or someone where I have to deal with it, is my goal to become friends with that person after. I was like, I will get them to let their guard down. And believe it or not, it's a lot of times it takes 5 or 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And just a couple conversations, and next thing you know, you're working together. It's effective. The role's filled. The goal is accomplished. And it doesn't take that much. It's just listening and it's trust.
Yep.
And I think being able to kind of put your foot down and say, here's how we need to do this. Here's where you're the expert. Here's where I'm the expert. I'll lean on you. You lean on me. We're going to trust each other and we get it done. And I think knowing, like I said, just knowing your lane, knowing your role, trusting the other people with their role, and so on. So, oh man, it's been fun chat with you. What? So let's do this. You've got your books. You've got at least one badass name. You've got a few things you're working on. Where can people find you? What are some of how can they get a hold of you? Again, if you've got all the names of your books, let's have them. Just let us know where can people find out a little bit about you and what you bring here.
Sure. I'm on X at SUM leadership. I have a website, summaryleadership.com. So one of those two venues, like I said, the books, I'll have to time them just right for release. But in January, I've got You Don't Know Shit About Leadership. It'll be on Amazon. The one after that will be called Ballistic Leadership. And, I chose that title for a reason. I'm an artilleryman. So what I do is I apply some overarching Army leadership sort of doctrine principles, dissect them in the format of the Ballistic Leadership Framework, i.e. neuroscience, personality, explain why the leadership's Army principles are valuable. And then I do something that's fairly unique and hopefully interesting is I take the complexity of ballistic trajectory, which means making a 100-pound bullet go from point A to point B, which may sound easy, but when you factor in all the things that affect it, the wind speed and direction at different altitudes, barometric pressure, outside temperature, the temperature of the propellant, the specific weight deviations in the round, because they're not all the same, the rifling of the tube, how much wear it has, the muzzle velocity. So there's all these factors that an artilleryman has to account for to make a bullet, a 100-pound bullet land, 10 miles away, close to the target. So you can take
and
those.
The Coriolis effect. I was talking about that earlier.
The Coriolis effect. That's
actually
right.
Today, believe it or not.
Really? That's a thing.
Yeah, it was.
The spin of the round, the spin of the earth, all of that. So there's so many factors. And what to me, what that represents is leadership, right? So I could give you standard firing data, i.e. in a perfect world, if I shoot this round, it'll land exactly here. But you're never going to experience that. You have to account for all these other things. So most leadership frameworks are built on, in a perfect world, like Simon Sinek and Brene Brown. Well, you just do these things and your leadership will flourish. Well, that's a leadership story from your perspective and the situations you've seen. The reality is leadership is so complex. As a vulnerable, empathetic leader won't necessarily be all that effective in the military. So what leaders need to do is understand the situation they're in, the environment, all the different factors that I've kind of outlined, all the different factors that apply right now because they're always changing. So I'm trying to draw that parallel out, and I'll do my best to make it interesting for the reader, but it is kind of complicated. And I've got one more called military, or it's called Leadership Optimized. I'm just kind of exploring ideas on that one, but it's another exploration of Army leadership principles applied to corporate America.
Okay. I have a question. You've given me one question I want to ask. 100-pound round. How big is that? What is that fired from? Like, what's the size that I would know if I heard it?
155 millimeter howitzer.
Okay. I was going to ask if it was a howitzer, and I would have been right. So now I wish I would have said it.
You would have looked so smart.
Damn it. I was thinking howitzer, and I was going to say, do they even do that? Do they even use those anymore?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, so that's a big round, and that's a massive round. So 10 miles? What's the range on one of those?
About 30 kilometers, which I think is about 16 miles.
Okay.
I'm probably wrong.
How accurate could you hit me at 16 miles? If not, how close would it be? If I was just standing there holding.
Well, there's a lot of factors to consider, right? So
if you had all of the necessary data and said, I'm confident in this shot based off the information that I have in front of me.
Yeah. So I'm just going to make a bunch of caveats up front. It's artillery. Artillery is an area fire weapon. Now we have precision weapons, but generally it's an area fire. So what I do, can I hit you with one round? Probably not. But if I put 30 rounds where I think you are, if I don't hit you, your ears are not going to work. You're going to be blind and you're going to be screaming for your mom. So, I mean, it also has the effect of suppression too. There are certain rounds that, yes, I can definitely hit you.
A round like that, you're looking at building, maybe an airfield or something, right? It's not an individual. It is just, so we're going to canvas this area here, and whatever was there is not going to be there anymore. And like you said,
you
if there
wouldn't
are
shoot
people,
it at an individual. You would shoot it at a platoon. Like there's some that are the HE, high explosive, that you shoot at whatever size element, a platoon, a company. It hits the ground and explodes. It shoots shrapnel about 35 meters radius. So I won't hit you with the round, but the shrapnel, and when I say shrapnel, I mean hunks of metal the size of your arm, half your arm, that are hot and flying at very fast speeds. Like you don't want to get hit with that.
Yeah. It's not a good day for anyone on the receiving end of that.
No.
Damn, I wish I would have said howitzer. Son of a bitch. All right. Last question. And by the way, we will, all of your information, we will post in the episode. Definitely excited to read the book. So you got to keep in touch, and we'll get everyone's your information out there for everybody.
For sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Most important question of the day. It doesn't happen often. The stars have aligned. Army, Navy. They're not shit this year in terms of football. Who's got this one?
I'm in the Army, man. There's only one answer.
I know what you're going to say, but let's,
Yeah, it's got to be Army.
I agree. I do agree. I was trying to think about it, and I was like, nah, Army's got that.
Do you know how controversial it would be if I said Navy?
I know. That's why I just wanted to see if you would say it. But you're an effective leader. I know you could get your guys on board.
Ooh, I don't know.
I
work with Navy folks in my office, so it's always interesting.
Good, man. Well, I'll tell you what, I've had a lot of fun. And again, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing, because in addition to, the military and your career, there is a lack of effective leadership across the world. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking military or we're talking, corporate America or corporate any country. People will always get behind an effective leader. And I think if we have more effective leaders in place, there's a trickle down. We've got more effective corporations, and it's a good thing that you're doing. So,
thank you.
Looking forward to reading the book, and I've had a blast talking with you, buddy.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Send me your address at some point so I can get you that book. This was great for me. I really enjoyed doing this. Had some good times. The coffee helped, and the pre-workout.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, well, if you're ever stateside, man, I owe you a drink. And if for some reason we chat again on this platform, we're going to do it your time that is more ready for alcohol. Like I said,
that's a deal.
Too early for you. So
that's a deal.
All right, buddy. Well, it's a good
All right,
chatting
brother.
with you. And yeah, we'll chat soon.
Okay, man. Thanks a lot. See you.
All right, buddy. Bye.